Good evening, good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners work session for August the 5th, 2013. As a reminder for those of you in attendance, we have a good group here today. Please make sure your phone or personal device is on silent or vibrate so that it doesn't go off during our meeting. Glad to see you guys. We had an extra Monday this past month, so it's been a little bit longer since we've all been together. If you'll notice, we have the work session agenda. There are a few changes that you'll note on the changes page. So this time I'd accept a motion to approve the work session agenda as amended. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. First item that we have always has been the QSCB projects, qualified school construction bonds. I see Mr. Whitkey, Mr. Crabtree. There you are. Mr. Whitkey and Mr. Crabtree are here. If y'all both want to come up and decide which order you would like to go. Welcome. Glad you're here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Why don't you go ahead?
Okay, thank you. Last meeting, the board had asked that I provide kind of a breakdown of the expenses and budget for each project, and I've done that. And you should have a copy of it, I think. I hope.
We do, thank you.
I'll step through that really quick. The A.L. Brown High School boiler, we had a budget of $66,225, and that's what we spent. The A.L. Brown High School lighting, we had a budget of $146,400, and we had $80 surplus on that one. The Kannapolis Intermediate HVAC, we had a budget of $1,711,819.37. That's what we spent. The Kannapolis Intermediate roof, we had a budget of $1,294,240. We are approximately $5,656.30 over on that as we speak, and we plan to take that out of our general fund to cover that overage. The Forest Park Elementary controls and the Fred L. Wilson Elementary controls. Forest Park at $5,200 and Fred L. Wilson at $6,500. The reason those are such small amounts, we had to pay to have those projects bid and the bid documents constructed. But after we received the bids, we decided they could not fit into the QSCB, and those two projects were actually moved to the one-time funding. But I had to recognize the initial cost of the Woodrow Wilson Elementary controls. We had a budget of $146,960, and that's what we spent. Jackson Park Elementary controls, we had a budget of $156,955 and 53 cents, and that's what we spent. And Fred L. Wilson, I already covered Fred L. Wilson. So a total of $3,534,299.90 with a net overage of $5,576.30.
Okay, which of these projects are completely finished? And
All
which
of them.
ones, everything's done? Nice. Commissioners, any questions on the Kannapolis projects?
Can y'all not do any job without an architect or an engineer?
Some things we can. Unfortunately, all of these we could not. We're required to have the engineer for all the control work, the boiler, the roof. We had to have a roofing engineer. The lighting, we had to have an electrical engineer. Pretty much our hands are tied on all that.
Who does it? State?
Well, this was a QSCB project, so you had to go by federal regulations on
okay.
it. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it seemed like quite a bit of money spent for engineer just on I mean, $172,000 for a roof. That don't seem like a little too much.
Yeah.
There used to be, and I don't know if this is still the case, there used to be the requirement that any facility or over $25,000 had to have an architect. Is that still what's in there? Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I knew that was a long time ago. I didn't know if that had changed. So that's part of the legislature that.
Yeah, they changed that back in the 80s or early 90s. I don't know which one.
But that's what I always thought it was, anything 25,000 or more that you had to have an architect.
Correct.
Okay, any other questions for Kannapolis? Yes, sir.
The project, if it's over 25,000, it has to, or the value of what's being updated, or
If a I always thought it was just if a project is going to exceed $25,000, that you have to have an architect to sign off on it.
Yeah, that's true, and there is also, depending on the nature of the work, if it's a mechanical system, that may not require it in all cases, but typically, for example, if you're doing structural changes to a building, or if you're modifying a layout that would affect egress in and out of the building, that also would require a review and a stamp, usually of an architect or an engineer. So there are, smaller projects that require it as well.
Yeah, and that's why on some projects, like if the booster club wants to do something, you can't just get somebody to do it, because you have to make sure that it meets code, because they're public buildings. But I always thought 25,000 was kind of a small amount, based on, I don't know that you do many projects other than maybe some maintenance things that are, much below that. Most of the things that you come to us for are most definitely above $25,000.
So we all know that amount seems to be shrinking in value every year, so.
That's true.
Inflation tends to do that. Any other questions about Kannapolis? Okay, Mr. Whitkey for
Thank you,
Cabarrus
Madam
County.
Chair. We'll talk, if you don't mind, about the milestone projects first, or report rather. There's been some question, I know, on our board's part about the Central Cabarrus High School windows and doors. That project, we finally have gotten a final payment request from the contractor. There are a handful of punch list items to be done, and we've, per the recommendation of our attorney, we will be completing those using another contractor to do that work, and then we will be settling with the original general contractor and make final payment and complete that project. So we hope to achieve that in the next 30 days. Excuse me, the Northwest Gym is coming along very nicely. Matter of fact, they just installed the wood floor, and it looks very nice. So that project is probably, again, I always remind people that this was probably put together about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and so it's a little bit delayed in terms of where we're at today. We have a completion date of the end of this month, and I probably daily ask the contractor how he's doing. They've had a number of setbacks, as I think I've mentioned previously, with the weather and with a movement of a cable service line that was in the way of the addition. But even with all that, they continue to work towards that completion date, and pretty much are working 7 days a week now, and they've been doing that for a number of weeks. And the only thing that still is a sort of a problem for them is the outside work, because it's just been too wet to do much. But the interior of the building is coming along very, very nicely. The kitchen hood replacement, I believe, although it says 5%, it is just about complete. I think we're doing final, it was at Coltrane and Webb, and that project was funded using facilities operating dollars instead of QSCB monies, and the work is, I would say, 99% complete. The Mount Pleasant High School boiler replacement is awarded. Its contract is in place today, and the work will begin shortly. Completion of that project is envisioned by the mid to late September dates. With Concord High School, the weight room and vocational building have suffered the same fate as the gym addition at Northwest. We literally were waiting for this weekend to lay the floor slab, because as of the nature of that building, the floor slab sort of ties the walls together and gives it structural stability. So I believe that was being poured last weekend or first part of this week, and we'll move forward. We are probably not going to make that completion date due to the weather delays that we've faced. We may get lucky, but I keep seeing weather forecasts in the future, and so more rain to come. But depending on that, we certainly plan to be done near that date, but it may push a couple weeks out. The various schools' breaker panels is 100% complete in terms of construction. We are waiting for the final final pay application from the contractor, and the moment we get that, we will process it and close the project. The frieze roof has been bid and awarded, and that work will start in the next 2 weeks. And everything else is postponed permanently. So, any other questions?
Commissioners, any questions? I do have a slight request at Concord. Could they On the side, I guess the main U driveway, the
Mhm.
circle drive.
Yes, ma'am.
Could they take some yellow striping or some cones or something as they're moving? Part of that's their laydown yard.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
And on the other side, there's a fence, which obviously
Mhm.
takes care of their
Denotes
area.
that, yes.
Then in 2 weeks, there'll be cars parked
In that area.
in
yes.
that area.
Yes.
So if they could just get some orange cones and put it up so that, I wouldn't want somebody to pull into a parking space because they're gonna be limited already with the number that are gone, at least for a couple months, and they drop a brick on somebody's car, and then they're gonna say, well, that's your fault because you shouldn't have parked here. But if they haven't done anything on the side, and some of that should get moved just because of work, they're gonna move the materials that are there for their
Right.
laydown area, but
Mhm.
it might be helpful if, I'm not saying put a fence up, but just
No.
something so that it's very obvious, don't park right next to this
Right.
because construction's going on. I think that would be helpful in about 2 weeks' time.
That's a good idea. We'll do
Before that, I don't think it's a big deal, but
Right.
just kind of depends.
Good
so.
suggestion.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Yes, sir?
I know I asked last month about the planetarium, but where are we at on that project?
We're just waiting for the consultant. He's doing a comparison of refurbishing the existing equipment and then looking at a new system. And I looked at the draft of that. I'm waiting for the final to share with both you and the Board of Education, you commissioners, excuse me, the Board of Education, and hopefully we'll have that by the next series of meetings.
Okay, great.
Okay. Anything else on those? Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Whitkey, you can stay right there because you have the next item also.
Feel like me?
Mr. Crabtree, thank you very much. Appreciate the chart.
Yes.
That's very helpful.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioners, the next items are discussion items for action at our regular meeting. The first one up is proposed sale of property for Cabarrus County Schools. Mr. Whitkey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the request to sell to the city of Concord the Webb Field properties. And that, as you may recall, is part of the old original site of the Glenn Center when it was the Central High School facility. The property was appraised, and that was done on our behalf by the city. And actually, the price that has been offered by the city is the appraised value based on the appraisal you have before you. I should also mention a couple of other things. One is that the land basically is in the floodplain and presents certainly in terms of our use and development, a limited opportunity should we want to do something there in the long future. The city has rented the property from us, I believe, since the 40s for $1 a year. And they've done all of the improvements, to my knowledge, on the site. So all the fields, fences, lighting, bleachers, and outbuildings, both the recreational facility that's there, the gymnasium and all, as well as the swimming pool, are all literally improvements made by the city. And so we've sort of been the recipient of that, and we've been able to use those facilities in times when we needed them. But in the direction that the Board of Education and the school district wants to go with the Glenn Center, we don't feel that there's a strong need for us to have that property. And part of the city's concern is they would like to start to make additional investments. They need to replace all of the high mast lighting and because of the condition of the existing lighting. And they're simply saying, we'd either like a long-term lease, or ideally, we'd like to own the property so we know that the investments are going to be able to be sustained and maintained by the city for a long time to come. We look at that site right now, and we've had certain discussions with the city. We would like the opportunity, and I believe they're agreeable, that as the Glenn Center modifies its use and moves into the future, that should we have need of the fields or other facilities during school hours, that the school district would have first claim on the use of those facilities, and that there certainly seemed to be agreement with the city in that regard. The value we feel is reasonable considering the economic conditions of the times, and as I mentioned, the inability of us to build really permanent structures on that property. The long and the short of it is, one other part of this negotiation, if you will, with the city was that we are doing a large storm drain replacement project at Coltrane Webb Elementary School. We have a large city drain that comes through that school property. And in order for it to be replaced and to avoid our buildings, we really need to move it quite a distance away from our structures. And so the city is willing to give us a piece of property that they own there and turn that over to the school district so we can run the drain further away from the school buildings. So that was really part of this negotiation, as well as the price of the property involved. So with that, I would entertain any questions.
Commissioners, any questions?
So what will the city use, or what do they currently use the property for? Do they, I mean, how do they organize what's being used on the fields, or?
I think pretty much through the Parks District and their own organizations. They do use it for football, and they have in the past. They certainly use it for softball and baseball programs. The rec center there is used quite a bit by local folks.
Okay.
And the swimming pool, of course, is a center of attention during the hot summer months. So it would continue in that use. I think their long-range plans are to improve it and to hopefully make greater use of it in the future.
Is a swimming pool on this land?
Yes. It's more or less dead center in the middle of that picture.
Plus, you got your ball fields, football field, and is there a baseball field in there too?
Yes, there are. I hate to point, but there are two baseball fields. There's a what would be the equivalent of a football and soccer field, again right in the middle. The swimming pool is raised up at the more or less the street level of the Glen Center. Everything else is down quite a distance.
What happens 5 years from now if somebody comes along to the school board and says, we need to tear that old schoolhouse down and build a new one here, and the county sold that land that was the ball fields and stuff back there? They don't plan on ever using that land for nothing?
Our long-term plan is not to do that, but our long-term plan is really to revitalize the building if at all possible. And we're looking at that.
The old schoolhouse?
The old schoolhouse, yes, sir.
For what are they going to use it for, though?
We've
Is it
talked
gonna be for
about it.
students, or?
Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
Well, they're going to have a place for a playground, right?
Yes, and we'll be able to use the fields that are there today for that purpose.
Yeah, but we got control of it now. Sell it, you don't have.
With the agreement, we would have. That's what I'm saying. We would be working with the city, and part of our agreement with them would be to retain the use of the ball fields and the parking areas during school time.
What's the county going to do with the money if they sell it? Or the school board?
It
Or
would-
who gets the money, school board or the county? School board does?
School board normally
Schools
gets it.
do.
Yep. And it would be used, it would be used for capital projects to begin with. And typically, we return, or certainly it's been the agreement of the county staff that we use those funds for the school and on which property we're dealing with. So the intent is to use it at the Glen Center.
So you may have better access to the fields under this new agreement than under your current lease with the city. Is that an accurate statement?
Especially since we cannot locate the lease. Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. You don't have your 1940 file drawer cleaned out?
No, not quite. And neither the city nor we do have an actual copy of the agreement.
Right.
So, and I'm not sure. I think they're in arrears, but I haven't brought that up either.
Do they owe you $1?
I think they might, but that said, we would have a definitive agreement when
Right.
we do work out these issues. And as I said, it could be either a sale or a long-term lease. The city would like it to be a sale, so they would have control of the property in terms of making the investments, the long-term investments they
Right.
want to make.
And what I'm reading here, it says, the Board of Education's request that the Board of Commissioners refuse its right to sell the property.
Yes, sir.
So,
To purchase property. The school system, this has no lien on it.
right,
So the Board of Education owns this property.
right,
Whenever the Board of Education goes to sell any property, they have to ask if the county wants to buy it first.
gotcha,
So what we're being asked is, what they're saying is
Yeah.
that we have a buyer from the city.
right,
If the county would like to pay them the same amount of money, the county can buy that property.
right.
and we have to give away our first right of refusal.
So that's really the only
That's what
issue
we're
before us, not whether or what the school board does with it, but whether or not we want to buy it. So that clears that up. Thank you.
Absolutely, sir.
Do you have any questions? Just a little known fact maybe for some people, I get asked a number of times why Concord High School are the Spiders. And the reason is the football field portion of this is named Webb Field after Mr. Webb. And so the story goes that in the 20s when it was named Webb Field, the question was what would play on Webb Field, and the answer was Spiders. And that's how Concord got the name Concord Spiders as a result of this field. My parents graduated from this building when it was a 1 through 11th grade, or went up through 11th grade high school. And I have my mother's letter from playing basketball, and used to use the rec center for the gym because there isn't a gym there. So there's been a partnership all along with the city and the usage of these fields. But yes, it would be, that was the clarification I was going to give. What we're being asked to do is to refuse our first right to purchase the property from the school system. And once we do that, then they can go ahead and sell it to the city of Concord. I would like to suggest that, it's just a suggestion, if there aren't immediate projects at the Glenn Center that this money would be used for, then there are some playground projects which were in QSCB which did not get funding. So I would hope that the school board would look at those projects or the ones that were high up on the list to use that money for if there's not something at the Glenn Center. I think the project at the Glenn Center that I know about is renovating the auditorium, and that's a whole lot more than the amount of money you're going to get from this sale. So
We have been looking, Madam Chair, at accessibility issues and seeing if we couldn't solve some of those with these dollars.
okay. Anything else on this particular?
That won't even do the maintenance on that building, will it?
It'll get us started.
I think that would be that would be the seed money to get started maybe with some grants. So, okay. There no other questions? Thank you, Mr. Wiki.
Thank
Yes,
you,
sir.
Madam
I
Chair.
guess the question is going to be, you'll vote at the end to put it on new business or consent. It can only go on consent if you're wanting to go ahead and waive your right. If not, then you might want to put it on new business to discuss once again. So,
Let's put it on new business. Think about it.
okay.
Well, we'll hold that thought, and we can move it when we get to that part of the agenda. Okay? Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Londa and Kyle. Next item we have is from Active Living and Parks, development of 2 multipurpose fields at Franklin Park. Welcome.
Thank you. As Commissioner Poole said, we're looking at building 2 artificial turf multi-purpose fields at Franklin's Park. This has been something project that's been ongoing for a while as far as the proposal and getting stuff together. RFQ, Kyle did an RFQ back at RFP several months ago, and McGill and Associates were awarded that contract, and they did a master plan, a budget, and I'll let Kyle talk about that specific information. If you want to go ahead and do that now, you're.
Can you flip to the site plan? The only thing that's misleading about that site plan is one of them says proposed grass field, because I had them break it up. We didn't know how we were going to do both synthetic at once or come back and do a second one later. But that's pretty much the master planning of the facility. Obviously, we haven't done any construction drawings or engineering or anything. We did shoot some levels to get some surveying done, but that's pretty much where it would go by the tennis courts and the amenities that it would be surrounded by. Part of the RFQ that they answered and the project that we chose McGill for was also coming up with basically probable construction cost estimate, which is what we've used and what you guys seen on the sheet before, the spreadsheet that lists all the costs. So these would be 2 fully lit artificial turf fields.
We've worked with CVB on this project as well, and they've been involved. Michael Applegate has been involved in a lot of the meetings and what we're looking at. And as you can see from the agenda request, it could be used by multiple sports, lacrosse, soccer, ultimate frisbee, flag football, volleyball, numerous things, and we wouldn't have lines for every one of those, but we could have soccer, lacrosse, at least in there permanently, and then you could do the others as needed or modified with some type, it wouldn't necessarily be paint. But a lot of different things could be played there. Would alleviate some of the problems that we have now at the existing soccer complex with letting them rest because of the wear and the tear on the field. So that would be a definite plus for us. There's sorry, never mind. The requested action that we need from you all, as it says, is to continue on with this project and also to have McGill and Associates to do the work. So if you have any questions about any of that.
I can add to that as well. As you're aware, there's currently an agreement with the CVB on their revenues that come through. And 5% of that goes to the county for administrative fees and some other items. And then there's also an additional 5% that was used to enhance our park facilities, to attract visitors, to attract out-of-town tournaments. The definition or the requirements for those funds fit exactly for what this field is. They've endorsed it. They think that they can sell it over the next few years. The amount of money that is raised, typically based on their current year or last year's budget, was that 5% equal to somewhere, I don't remember the exact number, but it's close to $200,000 a year. So what we discussed as a CVB board concerning this project, last year, the last couple of years, that was a 1 year, has an annual year contract. So in order to fund this project solely with those funds, we requested that we discussed a 10-year contract, which would be approximately what this field's going to cost. The board, the CVB board, was hesitant to commit to 10 years outright in an agreement. What they discussed, and we will have before you next month, so probably we'll have you the opportunity to think about this project, bring that agreement back at the same time, and then maybe get final approval in September. But what they've agreed to is a 5-year agreement with an automatic 5-year renewal. However, there is a termination clause in there with 60 days notice. So we'll have that agreement for you to consider and sign and see your confidence level on that. We can have the executive director or the chairman of their board come talk to you as well to talk about that. Before we agree to move forward on this, we want to make sure that agreement's in place. If that happens, that should be enough to fund the entire project with all tourism money versus any county money. So we won't know that for sure. We want to sign the agreement, then we won't know it until we would to bid it out and see exactly what the cost is. But based on the preliminary estimates, that's what's going to happen. The question to you will be, not only if you sign the agreement and you feel comfortable to move forward, and I know what our recommendation will be, is do you fund it and pay yourself back, or do you borrow money and pay a loan and pay the interest? So our recommendation to you, if you go forward with the project, is that we use fund balance, unassigned fund balance, to fund the project, and then allow this agreement, these funds from this agreement, to pay the county back. So right now, I guess the question, right now, there is no question to you right now. You can review the project over the next several weeks, and we can meet and talk with you in September. We'll revisit it and bring back the agreement with the CVB for your approval, and then also have the CVB executive director here to talk to you about the future and why they, and how comfortable they feel about moving forward in the arrangement as far as selling the fields, and then also in helping to fund the fields.
If I remember right, a few months ago when they were, people with the CVB was here, they were going to get some figures together on what the economic benefit this would be. and bring them back.
They've
to
done
us.
some of that, and that, we'll make sure they have that at your September meeting.
Okay.
When did we decide to set or to require them to set back 5% for? I remember that, but I can't.
There was, the previous, I think it's been in place for a year.
For a year.
I'll have to go back and look at that. That was last year. Prior to that, the CV board themselves set aside 10% of the budget for facilities for several years. As leadership and board members changed over the years, it was, they thought well, I guess their vision changed a little bit, and that they didn't feel comfortable owning facilities or operating the facilities, so therefore they chose to go in a different route. They were going to just do away with the 10%, and then that's when we negotiated, okay, we'll work it on an administrative fee, and then we'll take 5%, and we'll do that work for you and enhance our parks that would enhance them to the point where we could attract more visitors.
Okay. So the roughly 200,000 that they've received over the past year from that 5%, I guess that's just in their account?
It's in ours.
It's in ours.
They pay
okay.
us, yes, sir.
Okay, so we
Yeah,
collect.
some of the money, yeah, we collect it.
The-
Typically, the hotels, we'll collect it and then pay them.
Right.
Some of that money went to, and constructed the restroom facilities out at Rocky River.
Okay. I mean, I understand that we collect and then repay them back, but the 10%, I know 5% goes to administrative, and the 5% that's going to, athletics or
Right.
parks, we keep that as well, so we keep the 10%?
We keep the 5%
Right.
into one fund, and the other 5%, the facilities
in-
fund, we keep those
Okay.
into, you can correct me. That's how, in your accounting world, how do you do that?
We are on the beginning of year 3 of that agreement.
So-
So we had 2 years of collections of roughly around 200,000, but we spent
Right.
part of that on the bathroom
The
project.
bathrooms, right? And there's a
At the-
balance
At
in
Rocky
there.
River?
Yes, thank you very
Oh,
much,
yes.
the Rocky River Bathroom Project. The first 5%, $100,000 of that goes to support the arena's operations each year, and the remainder of the money is set aside for a potential festival or something along those lines, and that money is kept in the arena fund. The other $200,000, excuse me, is put in the capital reserve fund, and it's used for what Mr. Downs has explained for specific purposes. So there is a little more monies in there because we did return some of that money from Rocky River bathroom because it was not fully, we didn't fully need all that money. So they're in 2 separate multi-year funds segregated for those specific purposes.
Okay. And so what was the thought process behind reducing from a 10-year agreement to a 5-year agreement?
It wasn't a 10-year. What was the board's? We
Yes.
request, it's an annual agreement currently.
No,
In
it's-
order for you to feel comfortable.
Yeah.
To move forward, to know that that revenue was going to continue, we proposed
A 10.
a 10-year.
Right.
They were not comfortable with 10 years, committing a board 10 years, not knowing what's going to happen 10 years out into the future, as far as hotels, if in the economy, what is it going to do? And they do have other commitments with their budget, so if they start losing revenues, they still have to honor those commitments. So they did agree to 5 years. They extended it from 1 year to 5 with an automatic extension. However, there is a 60-day termination clause in there, and we'll have that exact agreement for you first week of September. So we're not asking you to make any
Yeah,
decisions tonight.
That's fine. Yeah, I understand. It's just an update. That's, my concern is the 5-year with the 60-day
Sure.
termination. I mean,
Mhm.
we could potentially end up, if we, take on this agreement, we could potentially end up having to foot half the bill, so,
That's correct.
yeah.
It'll only be half of it anyway. What's the maintenance cost a year for these fields?
We've never had any.
You
so
don't
I
have any
can't-
maintenance on these fields at all?
No, we've never had any synthetic
okay.
fields, so I couldn't give you an
I
exact
mean,
number.
you don't have any idea from somebody
Yeah,
else?
yeah, we talked to Mecklenburg. I'm envisioning probably $2,000 to $3,000 a year in materials.
Per field or for both of them?
No, for both of them. Really, the biggest thing is when it gets down to the use and who's using it and how often. And I don't have a plan from the CVB about what they're looking to put out there either. So But I've gone down and looked at 3 facilities that Mecklenburg has built, one that's under construction now, and gotten an idea, and we're looking at a fraction of what we spend on the natural fields that we have.
Yeah,
Okay.
I remember us discussing that in a previous meeting. What was the figure? Was it 17,000 per field?
Per field, that's correct.
So
Down
this
to-
is this
Yeah.
will be dramatically cheaper.
That's correct. Our biggest concern with these fields and the biggest concerns with Mecklenburg's fields is flooding. When these things flood, they take all of your substrate and take it away. So that's one of the reasons we looked at this location as building them, is it's one less likely to flood.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you. Next, we have cooperative extension. And first thing we're going to do is welcome you, Robbie Furr.
Good afternoon.
Huh?
Good afternoon.
It's good to have you as our new cooperative extension director. What do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
I would be more than happy to, yes. Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners, other staff members. I'm Robert Furr, a permanent resident, born and raised here in Cabarrus County, live out in Harrisburg. Transferred, transfer is the correct word, from Mecklenburg County as the Cooperative Extension Director there to Cabarrus County back in the middle of April of this year. I've worked for Cooperative Extension since October of 1991. Began that career here in Cabarrus County, working with the 4-H program for 5 years, building the 4-H after-school program, and then moved on to be an extension agent neighboring in Stanley County, then in Rowan, and finished up in Mecklenburg before coming back home. And so excited to be back here and enjoy working with the great staff that we have out there at the Cooperative Extension Office.
This was a good opportunity for us to make sure that the citizens of Cabarrus County got to put a face with the name of who's out at Cooperative Extension. Are you on who's a Cooperative Extension?
Nobody at the moment.
No, yet. Okay, our next commissioner will do that. I couldn't remember who had that appointment, so. Okay, well, the first thing we have is recommendation for voluntary agricultural district application approval. So
Yes,
you want
ma'am.
to explain that to us?
I will be more than happy to. Back in, as you may recall, back in November of 2005, this board unanimously approved the ordinance for the voluntary ag districts here in Cabarrus County. And since then, that's been about 8 years since then. We now have a little over 145 properties that are now in voluntary ag districts, totaling around 12,000 acres. For your information, it's a voluntary program. So we have 2 different levels of that, our original voluntary ag districts and an enhanced voluntary ag districts. To be in a voluntary ag district, they have to be participating in the Farm Present Value Use Taxation Program, and they have to have actively been used in agricultural, horticultural, or forestry operations for the past 5 years. To be an enhanced voluntary ag district, they also have to have a conservation agreement with Soil and Water Conservation. And so that's the difference between the two. And about half of our properties are in enhanced, and the other half are in our original voluntary ag districts. According to the ordinance, if we have an applicant that comes in from a high-growth corridor area that's as identified by the Board of Commissioners and our advisory board, then we need to bring that application to you for your final approval. Again, to be a member, and what you have in front of you is for Margaret Adams Dover, and her property is located off of Poplar Tent Road, just next to International Drive. So you'll see that property there, and that is in a high-growth area. Again, the purpose of the voluntary ag district, she is applying to be in the original, not the enhanced. So it is, again, just to be a part of the total countywide voluntary ag district list. It's a good faith from the county to approve her to be into that program. There's nothing binding on either end when you do that. The difference is if she was applying for an enhanced, then it does bind for 10 years. It's a 10-year irrevocable agreement, but she is not in that program.
What is the benefit to the landowner, Ms. Dover, and what is the benefit to the county by having this approved?
The benefit is quite mutual, actually. It's taking pride and understanding the farmland culture in Cabarrus County, and so it's marketing as well. They can advertise that they are a part of the voluntary ag district, and there's signage that can be placed out on that property to let the adjacent properties be aware that she's a part of that as well. So it's goodwill on behalf of the county to approve that. Of course, should you choose to deny it, that doesn't mean she cannot still continue to farm there. So it definitely, on your end, as a county, helps to build that goodwill with the farming community and to help put her into the numbers of other properties and farmers that are in our voluntary ag districts.
It doesn't change any taxation on the property?
No, ma'am.
Okay. This is the property, this has the farm, I mean, the field right there at the road. I mean, there's
Yes,
a
ma'am.
couple greenhouses there now.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's been, I guess they sell from the roadside on
Yes, ma'am. And then
Saturday
the
mornings,
back-
I think's what the sign says.
The back 2/3 is pretty much a vacant area, and then most of what the work happens is in the very beginning third of the property.
Commissioners, do you have any questions concerning this request?
So this does not restrict her at all. Being adjacent to International Business Park, I can see the potential of other uses there that might bring her substantially more income, and she's free to do that, should she choose.
She is, yeah, this is,
Yeah.
this, being in the original voluntary ag district, there's no restrictions to that. She could choose to remove herself from that at
Right.
any time.
And being, I presume this is zoned for the agricultural usage, so she's already getting a discount on the property taxes.
Yes, ma'am.
As a result of that. If she were to sell it, then we go back and reclaim some of those taxes, correct?
Yes.
3 years, we go back 3 years and reclaim the tax benefit that they get from being in an agricultural district. So, as you said, if she were to decide to sell the property, then we would go back 3 years and reclaim some of those taxes. But she has that authority, and she has the authority to do that at any time, just as with any other property.
That's
so.
correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Next item we have is a Cannon grant.
Yes, ma'am. The Cabarrus County 4-H Foundation applied for, through the Cannon Foundation, a $35,000 grant to be used for 4-H STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math programming, specifically with our 4-H after-school program that is managed by Beverly Bolenbecker. And the funds that we receive through this grant will be used to purchase and put together curriculum kits to be used in school and in out-of-school programs. And so we are coming to you requesting permission to use those funds and run those funds through our county budget so that Beverly can have easier access to spend and use those funds.
Commissioners, any questions on the grant? Okay. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, County Manager, the next is yours. Adoption, or if you're doing it or Jonathan's doing it, the
So,
records retention.
yeah, every several years, the state wants the counties to update their policies for record retention, whether it's electronic. How long do you have to keep certain information? When can you dispose of it? When should you, and when do you have to dispose of it? And how do you go about the disposal? This is the 130-page document that's in your packet. And it breaks it down into individual type uses. There's also going to be one that comes to you soon for that's appropriate for the Register of Deeds, the Board of Elections, and the Sheriff's Department. I believe those are the other three and we'll bring those to you as they require them. No way to go through this entire document tonight, so read through it. We've actually inquired with the state on a couple of interpretations ourselves. If those were to change what's in the document here that we need to update it, we'll make sure you have that in plenty of time before the meeting. But again, this is any kind of communications documents that we produce, receive, send out, and what is the appropriate disposal or storing of that information, and how long do you have to do that? And Megan has met with most of our larger department heads, and typically the state has mandated a lot of these times. Now they're leaving a lot of this up to us, and that's what you see in that document. There'll be some different colored text in there, and that's what we've made locally. So as you read through there, and you haven't fallen asleep, and you see something in there that we're saying can just be disposed of in 1 day or 5 days or 10 days, you don't think it's long enough and you want us to save it a little longer, then let us know and we'll make those changes. But as you know, we and you, as elected officials, your communications are governed by these regulations, so.
So the items that are highlighted in yellow, are those?
Those are the changes.
Those are the changes, so that we can see those.
Right.
Is this document mostly updating a previous document?
Yes,
Or
ma'am.
is it,
Yes, ma'am.
okay.
No,
So most of this is updating based on statute, based on conversations with department heads, based on current practice, to make sure it's in writing so that everybody knows what we're doing.
Yes,
Is
ma'am.
that correct?
That's correct.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have anything to add?
Has the county attorney read all of it and said it's legal?
It's a good question.
Not yet.
Madam Chair, I would also remind the board that the highlighted sections are minimum retention periods. Departments may choose to keep the records longer. That's just the minimum period of time you need to keep it before you dispose of it.
I had read the previous one.
Any other questions? I read it, I can't quote it, but I did read through it. I was, I guess, however many pages you said it was, 100 and some pages. I thought it was interesting for me to see some of the different lengths of time and how long we should keep things, and kind of reflects on maybe the importance of some of the documents as far as, and obviously some things are retain records with historical value permanently. I think most of our things fall under that category. But I did read through it. I presume that the yellow highlights meant that those were updates. I thought it was interesting to get through and see all the changes. So, Commissioners, if you have any questions about any of those, if you would please look at those prior to our regular meeting, and let the county manager or our clerk know if you have any concerns about some area and specifically that you think needs to be longer than what's already in there. So that would be very helpful. Next, we want to talk about Charlotte Douglas International Airport Commission. Mr. Marshall.
This is an item that comes before you more for you to give us guidance. As I'm sure you're aware, the session law passed. There were quite a few changes at the end. And again, I assume you've read quite a bit of that in the media about what those changes were. What did not change is that this board, with an airport commission, is the appointing authority for one of the members. I've included the entire session law so you can see that it went from, if you recall, one of the initial versions basically said that member or your appointee had to have experience in these areas. This is now should have experience in one of the areas related to aviation, law, facilities management. There's a whole list. The appointments you be making, should this move forward, and again, there is a temporary restraining order at this point, but should this move forward, your appointment, in order to stagger the board, those of Mecklenburg, Cabarrus, Gaston, Iredell, and Lincoln are for 2-year appointments, so it would be until December 31st of 2015. So what we're looking for as staff is your guidance and how you would like perhaps for us to solicit applications for this, to gauge interest, how you'd like for us to move forward. Again, assuming that should that restraining order be lifted, the dates of appointment will not have changed. So we will be under an increasingly shortened time frame. So we would want to get started on that.
Commissioners, my recommendation is that we do lots of appointments, and we have an application process that we adhere to for everything else. So personally, I think that we should do the same for this one. We can post it on our website. Of course, this will get information out. We can mention it again at the next regular meeting. And I was thinking if we could have applications before our next work session, so that, we set the date maybe by August 31st. Then at our work session next month, we'd be able to look at the applications, see what's come in, see if we need anything else. I do think we need to have a name by October the 1st. Is that correct? Isn't that what I read? So we would need to appoint somebody at our September regular meeting. And I think it's been talked about so much, a lot of people are aware of it. I know I've been asked from a couple of different people on what we were going to do and who could it be, in those different details. I referred them back to the statute that hadn't been passed yet. So that's my recommendation, is that we put it out for application. Anybody that's interested it's a short form, could easily fill out the form, and then we could look at their characteristics and their qualifications and try to find somebody to represent Cabarrus County if it continues forward. So what are your thoughts?
I think what you've outlined is a good procedure. I've been contacted by 2 people that are interested in the appointment so far. One thing that, if I read correctly, this last one, the earlier versions of that said that it would not be an elected official. The last version does not have that exclusion. So that's an option that's available to us as well. I might make perfectly clear that I'm not interested in that job, but Commissioner Meismer or Commissioner Burridge might be. And that option is available to us now that was not before.
It needs to be somebody that has worked around airports or knows a little bit about it, I think, rather than somebody that has never been involved in airport facilities and what's needed and how they're operated and all that kind of stuff. We need somebody that would know a little bit about that, I think.
Well, I think my initial response was what you had said previously, is that it should be one of us, because we're the ones that have to answer to voters as far as the decisions that are made. And so I do note that option is out there, and that would be up to any of us if we were interested, just to make sure that's known by the work session in September. The other thing would be, I do think that whoever we appoint, that we should ask them to come and provide updates to us, either written updates. I think any minutes of their meetings should be shared with us and part of our records, so that whatever is, if it goes in this direction and this is set up and approved, I think that we need to do all that we can to make sure that the information and the decisions that are made by this board are shared with us, and that that we can communicate well with whoever that person is, because they have to represent Cabarrus County on there and be concerned about our county and how the airport impacts our economic growth. I think it's a huge economic engine for the whole region, so I think it's something that we need to take seriously. So, Commissioner Meismer, did you have some comments?
I agree with everything that's been said. I think it should follow the procedure that we already have in place for the appointments of the boards, and whether it's one of us or whether we appoint someone in the community, I'm fine with either.
Can we get it on the front page of our website so it's not buried just in other applications? And
Kasha's back there.
yeah. Kasha will nod. I knew she would nod, so that's a good thing. But I think it needs to be prominent on our website so that anybody that's interested can find it. It'd make it easier on us. When somebody asks, we can tell them, go to the website and you can find the application and the recommended qualifications. How's that? So.
And will this discussion be on our agenda for our regular meeting as well?
We will. We're monitoring how the courts are going. Again,
Right.
You're not. I just wanted to reemphasize that by deciding which way you go on this matter, you're not right now. You're not endorsing one side or the other by
Correct.
doing so. You're just being cognizant of the process and those looming deadlines out there should the process continue with the new authority being approved. So
Right, and I think if we provide that update at our regular meeting and get folks an opportunity to hear about the application process.
Sure.
The 2 names that have been mentioned to me, one is a private pilot, the other is a flight instructor, I think at Concord Regional Airport. So there may be other qualified folks out there that we would want to consider. I think I agree with Commissioner Poole about having some updates from these folks. I don't want to make it into one of these school financing things where they have to come at every meeting and that sort of thing, but it would be important also to interface that person with our economic development folks, because that's such a critical part of our recruitment here in the county. So I think we need to be prepared in the event that it goes that way to act quickly.
It does require under the law that they make at a minimum an annual report to you. It also does require that this individual be a registered voter of Cabarrus County. And where I was talking about where it had said shall, it now says when practical, shall have experience in aviation, logistics, construction, and/or facilities management, law, accounting, and/or finance.
And one of the people that I talked to was more tourism-based and would have not necessarily airport experience, but most definitely managing facilities, the financial aspect, and a number of things that would be good. Why don't we, at our regular meeting where it's appointments to the boards and committees, before we make those appointments, that would be a good time to mention this and make sure that it's highlighted on our website. Might be able to pull up the website and have that displayed so it's pretty easy to see where it is on the website. But we can add that and make sure that, I agree with you that we need to make sure that information gets out. And we want, the best thing is to have a number of applicants so that, instead of just one. It'd be nice to have quite a few applicants. So that sounds good. Okay, the next item we have is a request from the town of Midland for a sewer easement across Wallace Park property. We have a number of folks here from Wasack and Midland. I'd like to welcome the mayors here.
And I was actually going to introduce the item, but ask the Mayor Kitts as well as David Pugh, and I don't know if Richard Flo was going to join them, but the representatives from Midland to come forward to explain the project to you and to give you details. In addition, Michael Wilson and Tom Bach from Wasack are here, so do you have any questions from their standpoint?
So if we go ahead and if the folks from Midland will come on up, we've got a few chairs. If you'd like to come on up while Mr. Marshall introduces this. Thank you.
And again, this is an item where we're looking for feedback from the board on how to proceed. You'll see as they begin discussions that this is a sewer line project that the town of Midland has been working on for some time. They have found a way, rather than using pump stations or lift stations, to provide these sewer services through gravity lines, which long-term are more useful and have a much lower maintenance cost. And they've done this by working with the long-range plan for the Water and Sewer Authority of Cabarrus County and agreeing to an acceleration fee. So the Water and Sewer Authority Board has approved this project along with a budget amendment and will be actually bidding and overseeing construction for it. The town is in charge of getting easements and as well as the design and engineering for it. And again, there is a map attached so you can see the approximate area, but I'll let them take it from here and give you more details.
That's correct. Thank you, Jonathan. And this is the exact name of the project is Cabarrus Acres Phase 1. There are two phases of this project, and for the Cabarrus Acres area, it's there's been some environmental problems as far as black water goes, failing septics, and so the town is qualified for SRF's state revolving fund loans to be able to put in sewer systems for Phase 1 and Phase 2. As I said, we're on Phase 1 right now, and as Jonathan said, we found a way through our engineers working with Martin McGill, McGill Associates, to be able to do gravity fed as opposed to a pump station, which is good for the city of Concord, good for Midland because it saves costs overall, and that holds true to Wasack participating into the project as well. The final piece of this is obviously we're crossing a park that the county owns, so we wanted to make sure that the board was supportive of the project as well, and on behalf of the Midland Council, we wanted to see if it was possible to be able to waive any costs that have to do with easement acquisitions, and that would obviously be at the commissioners. That would obviously be to the county commission. One thing that the town has done is we have talked with Tim Kaiser and Coleman Keeter of Wasack, because obviously the park is going to be needing sewer at some point in time, and Wasack staff is completely supportive, and Tom Bach and can speak to this if need be, is supportive of being able to put in stub outs for the county at whatever points they may need for the future phases of the project, and being able to work with Tim Louder, the engineer on the project. I know. So, Rich, I don't know if you have any more to add to that.
Just speaking to I'll speak to the long-range aspect. From the long-range perspective, this is an extension along Muddy Creek that works further along more or less the railroad corridor there, which will open up some of the areas off of Wallace Road, South 601, in the vicinity of the Corning facility for further economic development sites in the future. In addition to what we hope to have in that area now, which is fairly limited in size and scope because of the limitations of the sewer. So this will expand our breadth of our economic development potential in that area. And ultimately, as you can see from the exhibit on the wall, we've actually got a large service area that extends all the way over to Old Camden Road, Flow Store Road at 2427. So you can see it's a substantial drainage basin. The purple line that's on roughly the right 1/3 is that first phase that reaches Cabarrus Acres. Future projects could potentially extend that Wasatch line further to the west to be able to serve more opportunities in that region.
Questions? Sorry, I'm looking at the map and trying to make sure that I knew exactly where my map keeps going in and out on the iPad, where the park is. Is that the darker purple line?
The dark purple line goes right through it. If you'll notice, there's somewhat of it's not the yellow area, but it's the almost greenish area that's shaded there. That's roughly the park property. So it basically goes from the east side all the way to the west side and just off into some additional private property on the west side in this first phase. So it would essentially follow Muddy Creek in the lower part of the park, which would enable the design team that Tim Louder's leading on the park project to really be able to select where restroom facilities or cabin facilities and things of that nature would receive service from.
Okay, and so Jonathan, the advantage to the county is that we would have multiple stub outs if we needed to, or multiple connections that we would need on the park. So we're not far enough along to know exactly where we put cabins or restroom facilities. So while this is being designed, we could identify a few spots. Is that the idea?
Right. I did talk to Tim Louder about it. We have an initial design that was done for the park when we first acquired the property, but we're still working on some of those access issues. So all of that, as we get into final design and some of the specifics, is a little bit up in the air. So what he suggested was that you simply request taps or free taps into it. We will not have a great deal of sewer use for this property, but we will have some need for public sewer. So rather than designate specific areas, there'll be manholes that you would just request that we'd be able to tap into that line.
Okay, so that would be the benefit to us in exchange for not charging for the right-of-way. That we would have,
That's right.
we would not have to pay for those taps as we go and develop the park.
That's
Which I
correct.
know is a major thing for Mayor Kitts to get the
Yes.
park developed out there.
It's top on our list.
Also, good. Also, because there's a couple different phases in this, right? There's a couple phases.
For Cabarrus Acres?
For the sewer line extension. There's more than one phase?
Well,
and-
Cabarrus Acres itself has two phases. This particular line will serve the first phase. The second phase will come off of another interceptor line from the existing Muddy Creek, a little further upstream than what you see today, and that's because the development there, it's an older subdivision, about 70 to 90 homes and lots, depending upon how you kind of slice it a little bit right now. That has been there for quite some time, and it drains into two different areas. That's why a pump station was originally in the scope, was to run one of those interceptor lines for one of the basins and then have a pump station in the other basin to just collect on its side and lift over the hill. But in meeting with Wasac, we really didn't want to build that type of highly dependent, operational, cost-intensive, and very limiting in terms of potential for expansion type of system. We felt this would be something to consider. We presented it to Wasac. Wasac has embraced it, and so that's really what it's all about. And that actually just sets up the first stage. So serving the existing citizens also sets us up for service for future business, economic development, or community expansion.
And Bethel Elementary School will benefit from this also?
Not this particular line. The second line, after this is phase one. Phase two's interceptor will actually extend in that direction. As you know, the new Bethel Elementary School is served by a pump station on Midland Road. And once we install phase two's interceptor, then we'll have a short shot to bridge the gap between the phase two interceptor and the pump station at the new elementary school. So we're hoping to be able to attack all of that as part of phase two by saving some money in phase one with Wasac's help. And so we sort of knock out multiple objectives just through some good collaborative efforts among the various agencies involved.
And Wasac, this fits into their plan and just kind of accelerates their current plan. And you've already said it, but I see heads nodding also, that Wasac is in agreeance to, for this to go forward. And is Wasac providing funds for this? Or is, because this is not, the county is not providing funds. We're just being asked to allow you to go through the right-of-way.
Right, the county, Water Sewer Authority has approved $800,000 at our last board meeting for this project, and Midland is contributing as part of the acceleration project, cost to accelerate this project on our master plan.
And Midland's also doing all of the monies for the engineering, for the surveying, for the acquisitions.
Legal
Yeah,
acquisition.
legal, all those.
It's a very important project to us.
Just for clarification, in exchange for the easement or the right-of-way for no cost, there is unlimited connections for the park, and we're not required to have those in place by a certain time simply because we're going to be phasing this park as well. I just want to make sure you guys agree to that.
Well, and that's also a Wasac question as well. So if the word unlimited has never necessarily come up, but if that's what the board would like to do, then that's what we will ask Mr. Keeter and Tim Kaiser as well.
I could add a little bit to that, too. One of the things that we talked about was going ahead and putting in a couple of stub-out manholes, but it's not actually a good idea to have those if they're not going to be receiving flow for some time. So, Tom, tell me if I overstep my boundaries here. But so we're going to wait and actually install those at Wasac's request well in advance of the county's needs. And those would be something that would be done at the right time in the right place. And we just need to work out some of those details as to what the timing really will look like. Because we're still about probably 6 months away from actually any construction on this. So we've got a little bit of roll up our sleeves and work on this. If the county is supportive of it, then we can iron out the details about how many and the timing of those. And if Tim can get back with us about kind of what he thinks we might need, then we can make some specific decisions, decide on what can go forward immediately, and that might be really the missing link right there.
Okay. Yeah, I know you. I didn't know what how you were expediting moving forward and what your time schedules were, but I wanted to make sure that we could also move our master planning a little bit quicker if we have to. But if you need to know an answer next week or in 2 weeks, then we need to say unlimited.
Okay.
Simply because we don't know. But you know what the park right now looks like, so, I mean, we're not going to go overboard. We're just going to, we're putting a park there, so.
Okay. Gotcha.
But the location and the exact, if we want to put 5 cabins or 10 cabins or 7 cabins, we don't know yet, but we want to make sure we have that ability.
Sure. Okay. Understood.
The other thing that I wanted to note that the town of Midland has discussed and I believe is moving forward with is the other private easements that they need to obtain they would do so for a joint easement. So because one of the more important things to us is pedestrian access from those subdivisions into the park. So we would want those to be joint easements, and I believe they do also.
That's
Yes.
correct. All of our off-street utility easements in the town are joint use for pedestrian purposes, so we don't have to go back and revisit the issue. There's also another piece or caveat to the easement acquisition in this particular project, and it has to do with those that we'll be visiting for some of the construction easements along the street just for their normal collection lines. On those properties where we're affecting the front of their property in order to connect their home, but also a future alignment of the extension of this interceptor might pass along the rear of their property following the creek. We're going to go ahead and acquire easements from them on both the current line work as well as the future line work all the way to the edge of the project area, which is essentially the railroad crossing. So when we get to the point where the pipeline would cross the rail in the future, which we're not going to build, but we're going to acquire the easement. So McGill Associates is actually designing the sewer line all the way to the railroad, but we're only going to build it far enough to get to the neighborhood. But then we'll be set to go in the future, both in easement and design.
Commissioners, do you have other questions? As you know, I sit on the Wasatch Board, so I know we have discussed this. That's why I was trying to ask some additional questions to make sure we gave you additional information.
The only question or the only concern I had was the connections within the park, but, you know, of course, that's been addressed, so that was my only concern, and since the county's not putting in any money or cost with this, you know, that's the negotiations that you guys work out with Wasatch, so like I said, my only concern was connections within the park, and it's been addressed, so.
Now, I mean, we wouldn't pay for taps, but if we were to the actual construction, I guess we would have some part in that if we decided that we were going to run sewer for those.
Yeah.
Those would be our costs as part of developing the park. It's just that we wouldn't have to pay the tap on fee. Correct?
And this has been a huge project for us, and this is 2 of 3 sewer projects that we're currently working on right now. So it's very important, and the council would really welcome the opportunity to work with the county in making sure that we serve the park, because it is such an important thing to us.
Commissioners, anything else? Mayor Kitts, I would like to say that, and if you would relay it to the town council, it's, for me, for personally, I should say, it's been nice to see how well the town of Midland has really been addressing and looking forward for that part of the county. And I know you guys have really worked hard on all of these different aspects. And I appreciate the fact that your board has been so forward-thinking. I think you've done a great job as mayor to help lead that way. And staff has been pretty good, too.
They have. They have.
But it's nice because, I mean, there's a lot of things going on in Midland, and it's nice to be able to see that.
Right,
And
and
the
you
pride
all-
that you have for your part of the county.
We really have been working on some major projects, and look for invitations from us in regarding our groundbreaking for our new town hall that will be coming up in the next few months. So we look forward to having all of our elected officials there with us and looking at what we're going to do in the future. It's pretty cool.
And Chair Poole, just to thank your commission and your staff as well, and also there's a 4th entity here that's been supporting the town of Midland is the city of Concord, is who made the request to Wasatch to be able to do this because they own and operate the sewer in Midland. So we have had tons of support from multiple entities in being able to pursue these projects and just do things right, not operate in a vacuum. So I thank you all for that. It's much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Jonathan, you have the next item, revision of Chapter 78, Article 3, Code of Ordinances.
Hey, Chapter 78 is our sewer use ordinance, which is actually an ordinance that this board adopts at the request of the Water and Sewer Authority. It allows them to enter into pre-treatment agreements with users. So you may have a user who wants to connect to the sewer system in the county that has things that in their waste flow that would be harmful to the treatment plant. So you then pre-treat that water in order to remove those harmful parts before the rest of the waste flow moves into the system. So they have gone through and, based on some federal and state requirements, made updates to the sewer use ordinance, and this board needs to then make the same updates to the to the part that's in our code of ordinances. It would require a public hearing, or we usually have one to make sure we meet all requirements, so this will need to be on your new business for a public hearing at your regular meeting.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for the sewer use ordinance? Okay. If you have anything between now and our regular meeting, if you can send those to Mr. Marshall, he can try to make sure that he has answers for you at our regular meeting in 2 weeks. Okay? And we will have a public hearing on that. Okay, next, EDC, Economic Development Grant Request. First thing I want to do as far as the EDC goes is the EDC has a new interim director. And if you please come and join us at the microphone. Sure. Mr. Gray. Do you want to come with him too? Do you need to? This is Carol Gray. Mr. Gray, we're happy to have you. We'd like to introduce you to the public so they'll know a face at the EDC. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to this position?
I've been on board maybe 9 hours now, so I'm a real expert, but it's a real pleasure to be involved in Cabarrus County, working on a lot of issues. As some of you may know, I am compensated by the EDC and the Chamber in my role, and in that regard, I work with the business community, I work with local government to achieve our mutual goals. So it's very exciting to be part of this team. I think Cabarrus County has a tremendous number of assets. My previous job, full-time job, was in Charlotte. I was there for 22 years with the Chamber and had the benefit of being on a very aggressive team. And a lot of that, frankly, has happened because of the assets in Cabarrus County. We look forward to working with motorsports and the Speedway, and all your many research campus and so many things that most communities would love to have one of those items in their community. But we are very fortunate to have a number of them. And that's my story, and I'm going to stick to it.
Okay. Are you? Okay. Oh, that. Oh. Okay. I just wanted to make sure. Sorry. That you had a chance. I knew that you just started, but we want to make sure that you had a chance to be introduced and make sure that the commissioners know who the interim director is and can, put your name with your face. And obviously, you'll call upon staff and us and keep us well informed of all the events going on.
Thank you. I've
So
had a very
appreciate
cordial welcome so far.
Thank you. Commissioners, we discussed at our last meeting about putting this request on for a public hearing, and I failed to have that as a motion when we came out of closed session. So that is the reason why this is on here. We did have a majority consensus to place this on the agenda at our regular meeting. It's just it was a Robert's Rules of Order mistake on my part, if you will. So we would need to do two things. One, we need to suspend our rules and take action on this item to place it on for a public hearing at our regular meeting, as we had discussed at our last meeting, to do just that. So at this time, may I have a motion to suspend the rules? I have a motion to suspend the rules. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay. And may I have a motion to call for a public hearing for an economic development grant request for wind shear?
Madam Chairman, I would make a motion that we call for the public hearing on August 19th to present this economic development proposal.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. I have a motion. We have a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries 3-1. Okay, thank you all. Thank you. Next, Parth is here from Finance, rent and utilities for Human Services and the Elma C. Lomax Incubator Farm. Welcome.
Good evening. Good evening, Madam Chair. Thank you for this opportunity. In the FY14 budget process, the rent, power, and natural gas associated with the Human Services building, as well as the Elma C. Lomax farm, were not appropriately budgeted. Not enough was budgeted. And so this is a budget amendment for additional funds in the amount of $35,000 and $136. And it's needed to satisfy the total rent and utility expense for these sites.
Okay, Commissioners, are there any questions concerning this budget amendment?
What, I'm sure this is probably obvious, but what is the INC amount?
The increase amount is 35.
Increase amount?
Yeah.
So we're increasing building and power by $2? Is that what I'm reading?
One of the lines was $2.
Building and equipment, yeah. Well, that's pretty close budgeting, I would say.
Yeah, that was the only one. Wanted to make sure we got it right.
Okay. Any other questions? We do like to be very specific in finance. I'll say that much. Okay, the next item that we have is reappropriation of funds for ongoing projects.
Okay, thank you. This is fund balance reappropriation. It happens every year, and it's not any new projects. It's simply carrying over projects that could not be completed or they crossed over fiscal years. This means that the project was maybe 15, 16, 17 months. A lot of school projects are on this list, and that's simply because a lot of the projects can only be done over the summer when the students are out. And I think you heard that from Mr. Wiki and Mr. Crabtree a little bit earlier. There will be more in September on the agenda, but that's going to be for the landfill and grants, and that's only because we don't know the exact amount for the grants at this point in time. And so if you have any questions otherwise, feel free to ask.
Commissioners, that's page 386. That is in addition.
Okay, that's what I was going to
Yep.
ask.
Sorry, I should have said that to begin with. If you'll go to page 386 in your agenda, you can see the items and the amounts that, and that's just because obviously, as you said, our budget year ends June the 30th. Sometimes projects don't end perfectly, and therefore we carry those funds over to the next budget year in order to make sure that those projects get completed. So you may or may not have been able to look at this prior to the meeting tonight. But if you have any questions, if you don't know any questions right now, obviously, if you can get those to Parth before our meeting, he'll be able to answer any of those as to why they're needing to be carried over. Most of the justifications, though, are pretty self-explanatory. These are all things that were budgeted in last year's budget. So they're not new items in this budget, they're just being brought forward. Any questions at this time? Okay, if you have any questions, again, please make sure you let Parth know, and he'll make sure he has answers for us at our regular meeting. The next item, thank you, Parth.
Thank you for your time.
Kyle is going to come back. General services, service trucks and SUV bids. These are on page 317. These are also additions, an additional item to our current agenda.
Thank you. A public bid for 4 service trucks, 1 dump truck, and 3 SUVs was advertised, and a total of 3 companies submitted sealed bids on these various vehicles. Based on the outcome of these bids, it is recommended to purchase 4 service trucks, 1 dump truck, and 1 SUV from Hilbish Ford for a total of $170,000, $170,150. Basically, it looks a little bit misleading in the description I've given you when it said we bid for 3 SUVs. we bid for 3 different types of SUVs because we weren't really sure, both us and the customer we're providing it for, weren't really sure on the specs of the SUV and what they needed to do, towing, winching, things like that. So we actually bid for a mid-size, a small, and a large. And when all the bids came in and we made sure everything was within budget, then the customer made the decision. So we are buying the amount of vehicles we bid for. We bid the SUV 3 different ways. Requested action is the motion to approve the bid award and authorize the county manager to execute the contract between Hillbush Ford and Cabarrus County for the amount of $170 and $150, subject to review or revision by the county attorney.
Okay, let me clarify that the text starts on page 317. The spreadsheet for the bid tabulation is on page 391, in case you want to look and see who bid for who submitted bids for the different vehicles.
It was obviously advertised publicly. When, in addition to that, we contacted 5 dealerships in the local area. We kind of learned our lesson after last year, so we kind of went out, also let them know, send the packages. 2 of them did not show and did not send in any bid package. It was advertised for the correct amount of time. Obviously, we had submittals from Hillbush Ford, Lums, and then Ben Minette.
Who will be using these vehicles?
Emergency management, EMS, soil and water, and general services.
Is this replacing vehicles?
All of them except one, I believe, is a new position, emergency management.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Kyle. Next, we have from Human Services, Ben Rose. There you are. Ben and Trish Baker are here. Welcome to you both.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to come speak to you for a few minutes on NC Fast and where we're at. We wanted to basically take this time to, 2 purposes here, is to kind of bring you an update on where we're at with the NC Fast system and working within our Economic Services Division with NC Fast, and then discuss potential strategies to help us continue to deal with the challenges we've had. First off, I think it's very important for us as the department to acknowledge a couple of issues here. Number one, of course, NC Fast, for historical purposes, is the statewide eligibility system that we've been implementing to determine benefits under our federal means tested programs. Primarily, it's been focused at food and nutrition benefits, or food stamps, as they've been traditionally called, and we'll be converting to Medicaid eligibility in September or October. So this is basically the system that we use when someone comes in and applies for food and nutrition benefits. We enter their data into this new state system and determine the eligibility levels and issue the benefits. It's basically an automation program, web-based program. We acknowledge the fact that basically since what we called hard launched NC Fast in February, that we have had issues from day one with this system. And we acknowledge the impacts that those issues have had on the citizens that we serve. We have families and clients out there that are not receiving their benefits timely that they're eligible for, and we regret that. It's not where we want to be as an agency, as a service agency, and we have been doing everything possible to address those issues, including local food drives with our staff, even bringing food to help support families that are behind in their benefits, because we understand the impact it has to these families, and we regret it. We empathize with them and know that they don't understand the bureaucratic NC Fast side of things. They just know they're not getting their benefits. And with that as well, too, I'd like to acknowledge our staff, especially within the food and nutrition, but the staff within the entire division. They have been working just tirelessly to try to address these issues continuously since we launched. I think it shows their dedication and their commitment, because they are truly upset at the fact that we are having these issues and had these challenges, and I think it's a testament to their public service. They are stressed out and doing all they can do, working tons of overtime to try to get this system back to where we need it to be. But basically, when we launched in February, we just had system issues from day one. And I'm not an IT expert. Todd and Debbie can speak more to that side, but we just seemed like we could never get the system and the program to work effectively for us. We were having cases that when you start to convert cases from the old system to the new system, you know, counties or the state was telling us we should be able to do about 15 a day, where our system, the way it was working, we were lucky sometimes to get 2 or 3 done a day per worker. And it just piled up. And what happened is, as we had continual issues ongoing, we just dug holes deeper and deeper and got behind more in benefits. And we're not alone in this. And there's a lot of counties experiencing this very same issue. And we've really done everything we can to try to get it back up to par. We had, in May, we had a conference call where our IT department joined in with the state NC Fast, and they, you know, talked about some of the system issues, way over my head from that standpoint, but and got some, potential answers. And actually, Todd deployed a lot of people to our department from his department for the next 2 weeks, and we actually had, some drastic improvements in the system itself for about 3 weeks. And then the state started to have issues, and then we went right back to where we were. So we got going. We enjoyed about a 2 or 3 week period where we were able to kind of move some work, and then we hit that wall again. I've had discussions with Sherry Bratcher, who's the Deputy Secretary for Department of Health and Human Services. I talked with her about 4 weeks ago, and from those discussions, she was able to deploy some on-site service support to our department. And the goal of these are state individuals, and their purpose is to come in and kind of look over our shoulders and give us, analyze and assess what issues we're having and hopefully give possible remedies. And they work in conjunction with Todd and his department as well too. And they deal with both sides. They deal with program and technical support. So we were able to get that, and that's helped. But again, too, North Carolina FAST as a system has had continuous issues. I think it was a week before last, or actually it might have been last week, they had 9,000 cases that got hung up in the system, statewide, not Cabarrus County, thank goodness, but it was statewide. 9,000 cases got hung up, and they said, the clients were just calling continuously the next day because they thought they were going to have benefits on the card, and they were not there. It has been a true battle, and it's been a lot of it has been out of our control, but we don't use that as an excuse or a crutch, and it's definitely our goal to try to get us back where we need to be with issuing benefits timely, because here we go in October with Medicaid, and we definitely do not want to be here with Medicaid because we don't want to be holding up someone's health insurance that may have ongoing health issues because our system is too slow and not working. So we're really working hard with that. To make sure we're not there. I did talk last week as well too with Wayne Black, who's the division director who's the director of Division of Social Services for the state, and we talked about some of the challenges and issues that we've had as well too. I did put in a request to him to try to see if it would be possible for them to open up the system for longer hours. Basically what happens is at 7 o'clock the system goes down, so we have to stop working at 7 o'clock, and we have requested if they could possibly expand that to 9 o'clock so we could assess the possibility of a second shift perhaps so that we can get work done and try to get caught back up. We are right now, due to the recent issues we've had over the past 3 weeks, we're about 6 to 8 weeks out now. Again, we had gotten it down to 4, but now with these recent issues, we're kind of back out again with eligibility, and it is causing quite the issues. But so we're trying to do all we can to get back where we need to be, and hopefully not have these issues with the Medicaid side. With that, a couple of strategies that we're looking at doing, and one that we're starting this week, is to start to have some flex schedules with our workers. Again, our workers have been just tremendous through this pressure. they get the brunt of it. They get the calls. I get the calls. Some of you have been getting calls recently, and they have really been getting the brunt of it, but they really have been working hard and putting in a lot of overtime. We are going to look at trying to do some flex scheduling where we have a group of workers, like about maybe 4 to 6 workers, depending on the schedule, who will work 4 days during the week and then flex out a day but come in and work on Saturdays when they can hopefully the system will be working and they will have more time that they can get the cases processed. And that will keep them away from the phones and away from the interruptions that you have during the normal course of the day. So that's one strategy we want to look at. Another strategy that we definitely want your feedback on because of the pros and cons that it brings is to look at possibly developing some phone policies temporarily that would help us free up time for our workers to get work processed and get cases caught back up. It's a twofold, dual-edged sword, and I'm going to let Trish kind of talk about it because this is an idea that we got from another county, and it's a county that has been doing it since May, I believe, and there's not many other counties, to my knowledge, that are implementing this policy, or they're doing it in very restricted forms. But again, it's our purpose here is to look at freeing up time for our workers. So I'll let Trish kind of give you a little capsule of what we're thinking about to get your feedback and have discussion with you to see if this is, as our board, this is a direction you'd like us to see our strategy. So I'll let Trish talk about that.
Well, as Ben said, because we're so far behind, we've been looking at any and every option of trying to get the work done. And so when we heard that another county was doing this, we thought it was a good idea. We've got a very small call center, and because of that, most of the calls that come into economic services go into overflow, and the staff on the floor then picks up the volume. And I was running some numbers, and traditionally we see between maybe 10,000 calls a month in the division, and it's slowly been increasing. We're now at about 12,500 calls a month in the division, and the staff cannot keep up with the volume of calls and all the work that they're doing, and mostly it's clients calling sometimes many times a day to say, you know, where are my benefits, and we certainly understand that, but the calls then are keeping staff from processing the cases because they're having to investigate, okay, why didn't you get your benefits, and then we're documenting in our paperless system every client contact, so then the next worker can maybe better assist the client. So what this other county is doing is that they're taking their call center staff and they're retraining them to actually process food stamp applications. But to do that, they're having to shut their call center down, and they're shutting their calls down at 2 o'clock every day, and they've been doing this since the end of May. And then all those staff that were taking calls are being redeployed to actually process applications after they're trained. And we feel like that would really get us, well, obviously the system has to work. NC-FAST has not been our friend, but it will have to work. But even if it's working slower, having all those additional people processing applications will get us a few more applications and recertifications processed. So what we would like to do for a small time period, maybe 2 months, is to deploy all those staff who are answering calls to processing recertifications and applications, and let the calls go to sort of, they'll actually just not be answered, because if they go to voicemail, then the next day you would spend your day returning or listening to your voicemail to go back through. So we would just cut off the phones, and then all those people would be working on the work that's causing the phone calls. And our hope would be in a month or two, we would be back where we need to be, and we would be in good shape for the Medicaid rollout, which will happen in Cabarrus County on September 28th. So we really are working hard to try to get ourselves in a better spot, because we can't have all the Medicaid calls on top of all the food stamp calls. We're already struggling right now. So we're hoping that in some modified way we can do a phone shutoff for a few hours a day so that we can process applications.
And we understand that this is twofold, because while that helps the workers get the work done, obviously it puts the public off. And of course, we're not talking about shutting our phones down for the whole department. We're just talking about for the economic services area. But it's a strategy that once we heard about it, we thought it would be at least worth investigating to see, because outside of getting 30 additional staff right now, which we understand we can't do, we're relying on the resources that we have. So this would be a way to give them more time, free up more time for them to try to get that job done. And like Trish said, our hope would be in 1 or 2 months, but again, there's even no assurances with that. If NC Fast works the way it did the past 3 weeks, you can shut the phones down for the whole day, you can't get anything done. So there's a couple of contingencies there that we would have to have achieved. But it's one strategy we thought we'd bring to you, but again, understanding the impact it would have to the citizens, we definitely wanted your feedback and your discussion and your support. And if you shouldn't support it, we totally understand, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, Ben and Trish, can you, while you're talking about this, how would you plan to implement? You're not just going to, if the board feels comfortable with this today, you're not going to cut the phones off tomorrow. How do you plan to get that message out to your clients so they understand that? But then also, if I really need the service and I need to get in there and I show up at your door, what happens? You're not shutting you're just shutting phones down, you're not shutting the doors.
Correct.
No.
Yes, correct. We cannot do that. Under federal mandates, we cannot, cut people off from coming into the office. So that could be one of the results that you could potentially get from that. To address your first part, I think, definitely we're not looking to do this tomorrow. We would probably look to work with Kasha to do media outreach and then do our own client outreach as well, too, as best we can. And plan this with a future implementation date, and again, with the goal that it would be a temporary situation. So we would do the best outreach that we could, understanding we probably can't reach every citizen receiving the benefit. So that would be to answer the first part. But yes, for the second part is we're talking about just the phones to Economic Services Division. We're not talking about the phones to because obviously we need to be able to take reports of child abuse and neglect and take reports of adult and child support. They still get their calls as well too. And then people coming into the office, we cannot turn them away. They have a right to come in and apply. The nice thing about what's happening in economic services is that it's getting to a point, and the goal is that that people can get benefits pretty much without coming to the office. The goal is, because now we have ePass, which allows people to apply online, and that's been another issue that we've had. We had several hundred, I don't know the exact count, of applications that were done in ePass, but that never got to us through the state system. So we had all these applications sitting out here that never reached us, and that's been another challenge or issue. But again, the goal has been to get people so that they can do it pretty much via the phone and the internet and would have to not come into our office. In fact, we piloted a program recently where we literally did no face-to-face contact for food and nutrition. We've been a part of a pilot for the state for that. But no, we would not be closing the lobby doors from that perspective. We would have to see them.
Commissioners, questions, comments? What do you think about the proposal?
I'm okay with the proposal. I know I've served as liaison to the Department of Social Services for, I guess, my tenure on the board, so almost 3 years. And I have the most confidence that you are making the best decision possible with with what you have. And so I'm okay with that. Now, the NC FAST program, that was mandated by the state that all counties move in that direction to that program. Is that correct?
That's correct. This is a statewide program for eligibility, since they still basically set forth the policies and they leveraged federal funds to get the program. And that's probably been part of the challenges. I think they had some time frames. We talked about it a little bit with the DSS board, is that they had some time frames they had to meet, and I think this program has been rolled out when it's not been 100% ready.
And the purpose of the program was to cut down on fraud, is that?
Well, that can always be a part, but the purpose really was to streamline the process, and the goal was to take, the two primary programs that we deal with, Medicaid and food and nutrition. The goal was to try to make it where it's a generic application. In other words, someone comes in and one worker can deal with all aspects of what they're applying for, where historically what's happened is a person will come in and they apply for food and nutrition with a food stamp worker, then they go to Medicaid and they may apply for a Medicaid benefit with another worker, and they have to tell the whole story over again, and we take a whole new application, where NC-FAST basically puts it all together and makes it a consolidated process. So it's a business efficiency process when it works.
And so, just so everyone's aware, how many cases of food stamps are we talking about here?
We are over 11,000. We've not been able to get a good count with the NC-FAST system, but we project we could be actually maybe over 12,000. And when I say cases, I'm talking about a household, not people, but that's, cases of.
And that's just in Cabarrus County?
And that's just in Cabarrus County.
So how many people does that equate
That's
to?
probably 23,000 people that would be getting benefits.
But only about 2 months of those, so that's about 4,000 cases are currently impacted, and we're trying to avoid the impact to all 12,000 cases.
Right.
So.
Okay, in the e-pass system, whenever they apply, I guess online or through the phone, you don't have to show identification or anything. How do you know that it's correct? The information's correct, or who the person is, or?
Right. We still have verifications that we do through NC-FAST, but there's no doubt, and Trish can speak to this probably a little better than I can, but there's no doubt that verification of information has become less of a mandate. Now, that being said, we still obviously look at immigration status, and that's always a big one, but and we do try to verify income and those kind of things and assets as well, but we're getting to a point now we're taking more client statements on certain things than we used to in the past.
So do you provide a social security number, or?
Yeah.
Yes.
And for food stamps, we still need identity to prove identity, so the worker still has to contact the client for a copy of their driver's license, or unless it's
Some
already
sort
on
of
file. So eventually there are going to be more data matching, so potentially DMV would, we could link into the photo ID of the person applying and things like that, but we haven't gotten there yet. But to say that you are the one that keyed the application, I can't say that. You know what I'm saying? I can say that the information you've provided matches the ID that I have in it.
And to verify wages, is it just a check stub and maybe tax returns, or how is that verified?
It's check stubs, tax returns, and we also have a lot of employers submit their wages through various sites, like the Work Number, and so we can go to those sites and verify as well. So, and again, there's going to be some data matching supposedly that will happen down the road, so that we won't have to go out and actually call somebody to get their wages. We'll be able to go to the website and, it will be there.
Well, I'm fine with your proposal, and like I said, I hope the problem is fixed soon.
Commissioners, any other comments?
I'm fine with the proposal as well. Fortunately, you folks have kept us informed as you've gone through this process. So when I received a phone call from a client the other day, I was aware that there were issues and was able, unfortunately, I said to her, this new system is being implemented, and it's a mandated system providing mandated services. All of these things we don't have any choice in. And I knew that there were issues, although I didn't want to offer that as an excuse. I said, I suspect that's the reason for the delay, but I'll be happy to check into it for you. I contacted you folks via email, got a very quick response back that you would check into it. I know you can't do this every time, but it made me understand why you might implement this new phone policy, because that one case resulted in probably 6 telephone calls that I participated in, while trying to do my job at the same time. So I can only imagine how that compounds. In that situation, this citizen was very pleased that they did get contact back and things were progressing along. So I think it sounds like a very practical way to deal with that situation, hopefully get caught up.
Well, and thank you for that feedback, because I know we've had, a few clients contact. I get daily contact, and our goal is always customer service. We are very, Trish will tell you, I preach that daily, and our staff understand that, and we understand that this will impact that to a certain degree, because the client wants to speak to their worker and wants to know what's going on, where are things at, and we completely understand that. But I think it's part of the bigger picture is for us to get to that better place. Sometimes you can imagine when you're sitting in your office, you're trying to get work done and the phone keeps ringing and you get sidetracked from the task you're on. That's, to some degree, that's what we get with over 12,000 phone calls a month just to this division alone. We get over 16,000 calls to the agency a month, but this division gets a majority of those phone calls, and it's challenging, and and for us to get back to that better place, sometimes we might have to make a little sacrifice there to try to get us back there, but our goal would be temporary and to get back to that point where we can process those calls better.
This citizen was very complimentary of the way it
Good.
was handled.
I'm glad.
I thank you for that.
Our pleasure.
Well, are you gonna if you cut the phone system off at 2:00 in the afternoon, you gonna leave a message on there letting the people know why you're doing it?
Yes,
And
we've
call
yes.
back tomorrow and hope you
Yes.
can get somebody?
Yes, that's what we've talked about that, and we'll be working with IT to try to get that message so they're just not getting this, no one answering the phone kind of thing.
Well, you talked about Social Security if somebody comes in with a Social Security number, do y'all check to see that belongs to that individual, or y'all just take it?
We do run Social Security matches, and so, we don't have pictures to go with the Social Security number, so we rely on the driver's license to be that person, and the Social Security number will come back to that person, and if it's not, then there are steps we have to take to get Social Security to verify, maybe there was a name change, maybe the person got married, or, occasionally we do find somebody who's using, a false Social Security number, and we do take those actions.
The number could belong to some dead person.
Or, yes, or a child, believe it or not, a lot of
Yeah.
folks will you have a 5-year-old
Yeah.
who's worked 20 years.
Yeah.
We have a few of those.
Good, honest system.
What if
We try.
What if an individual doesn't have a driver's license or any sort of photo identification? Do you ever run into that?
We take statements from their landlords or people they know. We can take a written statement from somebody who is a reliable contact that, yes, this is the person presenting. So there are ways around that, but we don't have to deal with that very often.
Yeah, we can't use that to prevent applications. And I would say too, just to kind of follow up, Chris had mentioned about the fraud aspect. And I know when Chris was on the board, we worked with the DA, and Chris actually came to those meetings to set up where we could prosecute for fraud, and we have that now set up. And we, of course, in our budget, you approved an additional fraud worker, and we have one right now, so we'll be having two. And the one that we have, she has just done a tremendous job in detecting fraud, catching fraud, and getting payments back to a whole nother level that we've never seen in this county. And I think with the additional assistance there, because she is becoming so overwhelmed, I mean, it does exist, we can't deny it. I think it will see even more, collections and detection of that fraud, because it does happen. We have people that come in and they do what's called intentional program violations, where the client is trying to intentionally mislead you to get benefits, and sometimes they're agency errors, but this fraud worker works with both, and she's just done a tremendous job and taking that program to the next level. I think Chris heard some numbers over the last few months that were really impressive, so we'll continue to be vigilant in that area.
I'm not a fan of this policy. I'll be honest with you. In order for me to, I think it needs to be on new business and not on consent for next month. I would like to know, you say a temporary policy, I'd like to see exactly what the policy is going to read. How temporary is it? When's your start date? When's your end date? I would also like to know, how many people currently are in this division that's in your call center? How many staff members do you have in the call center now?
I have 3 full-time call center people and 1 who is a work experience person, and that's why most of the calls overflow to line staff. We only have the 4. We are, with the approval of the new positions that we got, and the going to a generic or universal model, we upgraded our line staff from processing assistants to IMC1s. And so we're building out the call center, and there'll be an additional 12 people on it, but they're currently in training. So right now I have 4, but the other upgrades that were included in the budget are in training. So we will have more.
Just to give you IMC, I know that might be, what is that? That's the Income Maintenance Caseworker 1. And basically what we've done is, with the generic method that NC Fast has taken, is what we've done is we've taken people that work at the front desk, work in the call centers are already INC1s, and the switchboard and the mailroom. We've upgraded them to INC1 so that they can do more what we call triage. They can do more activities up front to help the workers back in the division. But yeah, basically our call center has 3 regular full-time staff, and with 12,000 calls, you can imagine.
Oh, I definitely can imagine. The 12 that are in the process, at what point in time will they be trained?
They are being trained now.
So when will they actually be available?
They're learning NC Fast right now. We have them on an additional 3 weeks, so we're hoping that by September 1st, they'll be ready to go, fully trained to answer phones, to do the full scope of their job.
Okay.
So,
Then I'd also like to know that if we didn't restrict the phone calls, is there another option? Is there a certain number of temporary staff that could be brought on? And what kind of a cost would that look like in order to get through maybe the end of this year?
Okay.
You know, what would that look
Sure.
like? Is there something that we could do? As I understand it, if someone shows up at your door, you have to see them that day. And this deals with, people that call, that can't, maybe for some reason, they can't physically get there. It could be that they're calling 10 times during the day, and that's where your call volume is coming from. I don't know if you have data to show, like unique callers versus the ones that are calling multiple times. They're not getting an answer, so they're calling back an hour later. Or they didn't like the answer that they got, so they called back an hour later. Or I had 2 phone calls at home, one of which I could not understand the phone number, and the other I sent you the information that I got, and it didn't match anybody in your system. I think you were able to track
Yes,
it down eventually.
We were able to track one. I believe, of the
Yeah,
2.
one of the 2. The one I couldn't understand the name, and I couldn't understand the phone number in the message that was left. So I have a concern that when you turn that phone off, that it's going to cause even more frustration on those people's part. But I understand the need to get them in the system. Obviously, NC Fast is not fast. I like to say NC Wise was not wise. For the school system, I don't know if Power School's going to have any power. So, the acronyms aren't very good,
Yeah,
I guess.
We call it NC Slow on a regular
Right.
basis.
So I would like to get more additional information. Again, how long this would truly be that you expect this to be in place. Is there another option of hiring temporary workers and to help with getting the data inputted, and how that could look? You said there's one other county that's doing this?
that we know of.
That you know of. I don't know if there's any way that you can check and see what other counties are doing in order to try to, other than this, in order to try to get it into the system. I mean, if you're entering data and the system itself goes down or it's not available to you, I completely understand why you can't get it in there. And if you're in the middle of one and all of a sudden it shuts off at 7 o'clock, then obviously you've wasted 30 minutes. I don't know how long it takes to process each one. You know, if it's working, how long does it actually take to input it versus how long is it really taking you based on the system not working very well. So those are some questions that I have as far as implementing a policy.
I can address a little bit of one of your questions in terms of other counties. I did a survey on our listserv, and we could only find one county that literally is doing it this way. Most counties are maybe doing it in some kind of a restriction, but it's not where the phones are completely shut down. It's just a worker is given a quiet day, and we do that already. And that helps a little, but it's not the ideal. Most counties have probably addressed these issues with temporary staff, and we do have temporary staff in our budget, but our challenge is we budgeted them for the Medicaid conversion and hoping that we could get out of this hole in food stamps. But we just haven't been able to get there. But temporary staff has been the way most counties have dealt with it, and that's what NC-FAS had always recommended.
And I guess that's what I would like to know is what that number is, and it may be a matter that we need to do a budget amendment and provide additional funding for temporary staff to get us through the end of this calendar year, or whatever amount of time that you think would be most appropriate. And I don't know what that would be, but we have some money in our commissioner's contingency that we probably could move in this area if that's what you need in order to get this done. And I don't have that answer, but any information you can provide to us at the regular meeting, then I would be interested in hearing about that. Make sure we can.
We'll be glad to do that.
Do this.
We'll get that together for you.
I think we have to do something. We can't just not do something. And I'd like to have more options than just turning the phones off.
Sure.
I've
Okay.
got
Any
a
other?
question.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Whenever the state decided to move in this direction with NC-FAS, was there any funds provided to hire temporary employees?
Not to the counties.
Not to counties.
Yeah.
No.
The state has
Yeah.
temps that are going out and doing things like they're doing now. They're looking
Assist.
over our shoulder to see maybe they could figure out what's wrong. And
Right.
most of the time, it's NC-FAS that's wrong, not really our worker.
Right. Okay. And I certainly know this is taking a toll on your staff, and I respect Commissioner Poole's opinion, but I would be against hiring any temporary employees for this. It would be fine with me if you need to be more aggressive and turn the phones off at noon, because you're trying to accomplish, what you can do. And I know each of us said we received phone calls, and I've had 2 individuals that has called me probably 5 times a day and left messages. And, that's absurd. I mean, you can't accomplish what you're doing because of that. And so I'm comfortable with that plan. Like I said, if it needs to be more aggressive, that's fine with me as well.
Didn't you say the state changed this plan because of federal funds, to get federal funds?
Well, this has always been the plan. I think what happened was the rollout had to happen a little quicker.
But it was federal government.
Based on federal funds that they pulled down for it. That's right. So the rollout happened very quick. In fact, that's what the big concern is with Medicaid, is that we're just not ready for Medicaid because we've had all these issues with food and nutrition.
Is there any items you can't buy with food stamps? Any limit to what you can buy?
Well, most non-perishables are not allowed to be purchased, and it's typically just food. And of course, the allotment is based on the qualifications, the eligibility that they have.
Is wine considered a food?
No, wine is not. Wine or tobacco products are not
Alcohol,
allowed.
tobacco, pet supplies.
Yeah. If you
paper
see that in a
products.
store, you need to let us know.
Well, I've seen that.
We need to investigate that store. Because that is regulated actually by the USDA, but we can work in conjunction on that. Not supposed to be.
One additional question about the temporary staff, just so I understand. If I understood you originally, the issue much of the time, or many times, it doesn't matter how many people you got there, because the system will not allow you to do what you need to do. Is that? So it's a combination of those?
It's a combination, or the system's very slow. It might be working, but it's slower. And then we had periods of time in the last 3 weeks where it's literally, we haven't been able to do anything. For the most part, like the other day, we got this notice about a Java upgrade that we had to do. And I think we're working with Todd on making sure we have the Java upgrade, because it was locking people out of the system. And so it's little things that come up like that we have to kind of tackle. But when it works, if we could get it to work, there's no doubt temporary staff would be a great benefit because
Right.
we could put more people on it. I mean, we have, we're limited in our resources, and our staff are, they're playing from behind. So,
Right.
it's, it definitely is a challenge. But,
And
yeah,
so
it's
when
got to
you-
work for us to accomplish
When you go
everything.
in the morning, you don't know if it's going to work that day or not.
We often get the emails, and Todd sees them too, that something's happened here, something's happened there.
Right.
And often it's not all day. It's rare. I have to give the NC Fast team credit. They try to address issues when it happens at their level. But yeah, you just don't know what you're going to get day in and day out. And we actually, the social service directors have been really urging the state to try to put out communications to clients because, I mean, every county to some degree is dealing with this. Some counties are better off than others, there's no doubt, but there's counties that are in the same boat we are, and we've been trying to get them to have communications with the public to talk about, because we get kind of the brunt of it, but yet it's really out of our control sometimes, and they've been a little reluctant to go that route. So we're trying to work with the state on that communications piece as well too. But it's again, when you're a client and you don't have your benefit, that's all you're not concerned about our computers and what they're doing that day. You're ready for your benefit.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ben, you have the next topic also?
I think so, yes.
Target Corporation grant awarded for art supplies for children in the foster care program.
Yes, I'm happy to report that this is the third year running, I think, that we have received a grant from the Target Corporation. This has been a joint partnership with the Guardian Ad Litem program. I first applied for the grant about 3 years ago, and we received it from Target, and then the Guardian Ad Litem over the last 2 years has applied for it, obviously with our support. They've done the actual filling out of the application. But basically, it's a $2,000 award, and the purpose of the grant is to help bring cultural education and enrichment to children. So we use that to work with our foster children. And they have, over the course of the past 3 years, really benefited a lot from this grant. We've been able to and for the most part, it's usually the older foster children that we're working with here, usually 12 and over. We've been able to take them to Washington, D.C., to take field trips to D.C. They've gone to symphonies and plays and gone to the theater, and it's just been a really wonderful program. Jennifer Drisker, who's our links coordinator, uses the funds a lot to help work, again, really focus on the older kids because we're trying to expose them and give them that enrichment and give them that extra little educational opportunity they may not have. And it's just been a wonderful partnership we've had with the Guardian Ad Litem, and just so pleased to announce that we have just recently learned for the third year in a row we are receiving this grant.
Commissioners, any questions? Could you get us information over, this is the third year?
Third year.
Hey, could you get us information of the previous 2 years of how many people have
Sure.
been impacted by
Sure,
it?
definitely. Sure we can.
I mean, I think it's great to get a grant. I don't have a problem with a grant from Target Corporation, but
And the nice thing about this grant is there's no county matching funds. It's all funded by the Target Corporation.
I mean,
So
I think
I can definitely do that.
I think that's great. I'd just like to know if you're serving 10 students or
Sure.
100
Definitely.
students, yeah.
I will
Okay.
get those figures together for you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Todd Shanley's here. Talk about IT approval of storage area network lease extension. Welcome.
Hey, how are you? Yeah, what I'd like to ask you to do is authorize the county manager to sign the extension to this lease. The good news is that our school projects are going very well. The school system is adopting the use of the storage. We're just running out. So CCS is projecting that they need, Cabarrus County Schools is projecting they need 25 terabytes over the next 3 years. This expansion will provide for that, and we'll be able to get that hopefully done early in this school year if we approve this month. Currently, we have basically this would double our current allotments. We have two storage area networks, one here in this building and the other at our remote site across town, and we replicate between those two.
Commissioners, questions? Is this a budgeted item?
It
How
is.
much money? So
Yeah,
we've already approve
is
the money?
Yes, it is currently budgeted. This is just the extension of that. So we've budgeted the difference.
And how do you go about adding capacity?
This actually would be a forklift replacement. It would require very little downtime, but it will require some. We'll do it all in off hours. We have maintenance windows that we set up with both school systems and our end users. Usually a Sunday morning, Saturday night type scenario where we're down for a couple hours, and both systems wouldn't be out of commission at the same time. We would do those separate and roll them out that way. But it's a phased-in approach that makes the storage available within hours.
All right, Commissioners, any questions?
Curiosity, this is a physical increase, not a cloud
No,
type?
correct. We are our own cloud. We provide the cloud term. We do that for the school system. We kind of coined the term that we're the Cabarrus County cloud. So rather than it buying storage from somewhere else, no, the physical disks reside here in this building.
And so do we lease those from someone?
We do. We lease
Just
the
sort of-
lease the equipment. The reason we lease it is because the value drains so quickly,
Right.
and we feel like we're getting the most bang for our buck through the lease, and then turning it back over to the leasing company at the end. They're not that way. We're not having to worry about selling it or anything at the end for less than it's really worth.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Doc.
Thanks.
Okay, next from Planning and Development, we have Kelly Sifford to talk about the 2012-2013 Home Caper Annual Report. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. The CAPER report is something that we have to do annually for the home program. As I discussed with you back, I believe it was in March, about some of the difficulties we had had with qualifications, we did not complete any units this year. We spent $858 doing lead reports and things like that in anticipation, and we did sign a contract right at the end of the year, so we do have a project underway now, and I do have 3 good applications on file that are in various stages of the process, so we're getting caught up now, I believe, so we're starting to move forward again. Are there any questions?
Commissioners, do you have any questions? Okay, so this does call for a public hearing.
Yes, ma'am.
That we will have at our regular meeting. Okay.
Yes, this is a federal grant that comes to us through the City of Concord.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next, Dennis Testerman is here to talk about Soil and Water Conservation District option to purchase conservation easement along Back Creek. Welcome, Dennis.
Thank you for this opportunity to be back. This is a project we've already discussed at least once, and we're just trying to move it forward. I believe you should have a resolution in front of you for granting a conservation easement on the Hickory Ridge Middle School campus along Back Creek in conjunction with the stream restoration project that we are working with a mitigation banker on trying to get approved by the state of North Carolina. So this is the next step in terms of paperwork, is to go ahead and have these easements lined up so that when they take the project to the state, that's something the state wants to see at that time. Still don't know if the project's going to be viable or not, but this is the next step.
And again, just for background, this resolution is one that our bond counsel prepares, because these are, the property it's crossing in part has the lease purchase financing, so that collateralizes the school and property, so we need these resolutions in order to grant an easement on the property that is set up as collateral.
Commissioners, questions? No? Good? Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, next we have Chief Deputy Hunt here from the Sheriff's Department to talk about some police interceptor vehicles. Welcome.
How you doing? We did a bid package on the patrol vehicles for the coming year, 2014 Ford Police Interceptors. They're built on the Taurus platform. We got 2 bid responses back, one from Lums Ford in Albemarle and one from Hilbish. Hilbish actually was $667 per vehicle cheaper. And as you say, we had budgeted $390,000 for 15 vehicles for this year, and that total is actually going to only be $367,000 that we will need to get those vehicles this year.
Any questions, commissioners?
Aren't these are V6s, right?
Yes, sir.
What's the gas mileage on the thing?
Not real sure. They're probably getting around 17 to 18 maybe, just a little bit better than the Dodges and the Crown Vics are getting. They get less than that.
Yeah.
With the V8.
Well, you buy them from a good company anyway.
Are these replacement vehicles or these
10 of
expansion?
10 of these vehicles are replacement vehicles. 3 are for new positions, and 2 are going to be assigned to Midland. And if we're able to get this bid through, Midland's actually going to piggyback on the bid and get the 2 vehicles that they need to match the 2 we have.
So that would put 4 vehicles in Midland? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I presume that the ones that are being replaced, I'm waiting on Commissioner Burridge normally ask all these vehicle questions, and he's not doing it. These follow the policies for the policy we have for replacing vehicles as far as mileage goes and
Yeah, they're well
maintenance and
over
everything else.
100,000.
100,000 good for you?
Now, what I was thinking about, in Midland, I wonder if they've changed the speed limit signs down there yet.
To,
you know, you got a 30 for a certain distance, and you got 35, and you got 45. That way you can stop more people.
we had nothing to do with that.
Are there any other questions on the vehicles? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That's your area of expertise. You always ask, so I was.
This is patrol vehicle, right? They don't bother me too much. County vehicles buying them for
Okay. I had 2 other things real quick, just to mention that they're not for us to take any action. Do you want to do the Health Services Board?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we talked earlier about promoting the application process for the Airport Authority position. I would suggest we do the same thing for our new Human Services Advisory Board. We have 5 positions on that board. We've got 2 applications so far, so we need to get the word out if you know anybody that might be interested. And then sooner we get those members in place, we can start that process. And
Am I included in one of the 5? Or we're
no,
not going to have a?
You're not.
It's just going to be a liaison.
A liaison, yeah, that's what. And
that's fine.
we can draw it up either way, but I would recommend that you go that way, so.
Okay.
Okay, Kasha, can you make sure that one's also prominently on our homepage? Thank you very much. And the other thing is, I feel certain you guys are getting the same emails and phone calls that I am concerning a piece of property that Kannapolis Planning and Zoning is dealing with. Any emails that I've gotten, I have forwarded them on to the Kannapolis City Manager, Mike Legg, and to Councilman, trying to think which councilman, whichever, the ones that I have in my phone's usually how I'm forwarding emails out. So, and have asked that all their councilmen get copied on the emails and the concerns that people out in that part of the county have. But just wanted to make a comment, and Jonathan, if you could chime in too. We don't have any authority. That is purely Kannapolis City authority. It is in the city in the county limits. However, their authority takes care of this area, and there's nothing that we will be doing concerning that piece of property as commissioners. Isn't that correct?
There was a question about support of a application for federal funding, and to my knowledge, that does not come before you. I did verify that there was a request on that property, but it won't come before you that I know of.
So if there anybody that anyone else besides the ones that have contacted us so far interested or concerned about that piece of property, they would need to talk to the mayor of Kannapolis and the Kannapolis councilman about their concerns, because it's under their jurisdiction, so. Okay, Commissioners, if you will look at the proposed agenda for our regular meeting. Let's see, under consent, item number 1, that's those 2 multipurpose fields. Do we not want to move that to September? Okay, so we'll delete that and we'll move that one, number 1, to September. Number 2 was the proposed sale of the property. Commissioner Burridge, you asked to move that to new business, correct? Cabarrus County Schools with the property behind the Glenn Center?
Yeah.
You want that on new business?
Yeah.
Okay, we will move that and make that item number 5 for new business.
I'd also like to see number 9 on your business.
Number 9 will come item number 6. I would like to see number 10 go under new business, so that would make it number 7 under new business. Is there anything else under consent, Commissioners, that you would like to have moved to new business? Okay, if there's nothing else to be moved, then let's look at the new business. We do have the need for 3 different public hearings, so those would still stay as 1, 2, and 3. Number 4 is an addition, a dashboard report. Will that be that'll be a presentation to us? Okay. It's their annual presentation that they will make to us, so that would stay number 4. Again, number 5 would then become Cabarrus County Schools proposed sale of property. Number 6 is item number that's shown as number 9, which is general services, award of service trucks and SUV bids. Number 7, human services, the phone policy for economic services. Okay.
Whose annual report is number 4?
Cardinal Innovations.
Okay.
Under appointments to boards and committees, we don't need to necessarily add this in there, but Megan, it would be helpful for me if you would put in there to make a comment about the Airport Commission and the Human Services Board, just as a reminder for the public and try to get some information. Number 2, we won't be doing appointments for the Airport Commission at this meeting. We'll move that one to September and do those appointments in September. And just a reminder for any of the public that is listening or watching this particular meeting, please go to our website. There's a link I usually click on, I want to find. I think that's where it is, and you can find all the different committees that we have available. And I encourage people to apply for those committees. A number of these have openings, and we need some more people that are willing to step up and serve on these different committees. So if there's no other changes, or are there any other changes, any other suggestions for changes to the agenda? Okay. At this point, I would accept a motion that we approve the regular meeting agenda with the changes so noted.
So moved.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Commissioners, we do have need for closed session? Yes? We did. Oh, you're right. It's not on there? We need to do a motion to set the public hearings? Okay, sorry. Okay. We have 3 public hearings listed. Well, we already did a motion for Windshear earlier. That one was 3-1. We suspended the rules on that one. So we do need a motion to set a public hearing for item number 2 under new business, the 2012-13 Home Caper Annual Report, and also a public hearing for the revision of Chapter 78, Article 3 Code of Ordinances. Do I have a motion to set those? Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, now we do need closed session. So at this time, I accept a motion to go into closed session for pending litigation per North Carolina General Statute 143-318-11A3.
So moved.
I have a
Second.
motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we will be, we're now in closed session. We'll go down the hallway. Thank you all to everybody here tonight and to the viewing audience.